Hello everyone, and thank you very much for watching this video. I'm going to be doing a complete rundown of my all foil Animar Soul of the Elements commander deck. I have been building this deck since I think 2010, maybe 2011. I'm not 100% sure when the Animar Precon first came out, but I started building this deck way back in the day. I picked Animar because I love playing creatures. I love those three colors together in a deck. I love elementals. I think the artwork is cool. And I decided right from the get-go that I was going to build it with foil cards only. So in the beginning, I built it really cheaply, and there were a lot of cards in it that I didn't necessarily like that much. I was just kind of picking creatures that looked cool and that were cheap to buy foil. But ever since then, I have been here's my hands. I'm wearing gloves. I've been very slowly building this deck, just a few cards at a time, and it's finally done. I told myself that I would finish building it so that it would be ready to play at Magic 30 in Vegas this month, and that time is now. I just de-sleeved it. I'm putting brand new sleeves on it. I just got these from Dragon Shield, the new Fury dual mats with some perfect fit sealable inner sleeve, so I'm going to double sleeve the whole thing. Yeah, I thought this was a great opportunity since they're all out of their sleeves for me to show the deck off. So first things first, I have this custom deck box that I got made for me by Munchkin Metropolis on Etsy. I did this illustration, this drawing of Animar's face, and got it laser etched into this beautiful wooden box. I'm really happy with it. If you need a custom deck box for your commander deck, I would definitely recommend checking out Munchkin Metropolis on Etsy. Shouts out. Pop the top. Like I said, they're all unsleeved temporarily. So first things first, obviously, Animar himself. This is the M25 version. I used to have a Japanese version before M25 did the reprint because it wasn't available foil. So I said, if I'm going to have one, I'm going to have a Japanese one at least. Unfortunately, that version was stolen. I still have this, and I actually opened in my box from the most recent Double Master set. I just happened to open the new artwork foil as well, totally by chance. So I have both of these. I prefer the original artwork for sure, but I think it's cool that I have both. Maybe I'll even sleeve them together just for like good juju in the deck or whatever. So before I show you the cards, I did build this deck with some restrictions. It has always been built with the following restrictions. It is creature spells only. There are no instants, no sorceries, no enchantments, no artifacts. It is only creature spells. And what's more is there are no colorless creature spells. So there are no artifact creatures. There's no Eldrazi. It is mono creatures, no colorless, all foil. Those were the rules that I set myself for this deck, and I've stuck with those rules this whole time. Let's get into it. So we're gonna start with the land base. I think is the way to go. We'll show you the spells afterwards. I'm gonna kind of go by land type. So these are the any color lands. Some of them are conditional. There is Ancient Ziggurat, which taps for 1 mana of any color, only to cast creature spells, which is perfect in this deck because it's all I have. Foil, borderless, Command Tower from Commander Legends. Frontier Bivouac, Showcase Ketria Triome, Mana Confluence promo, and borderless Reflecting Pool. Next up, I'm going to show you the Shocks and Fetches pack. So I have all 3 shocks and all 3 fetches in these 3 colors, all expedition. These were the last 3 pieces of the puzzle for me. These were the cards that finally completed the deck. I got a nice bonus at work, and I decided it was time to pull the trigger. Wooded Foothills, Scalding Tarn, Misty Rainforest, Stomping Ground, Steam Vents, and Breeding Pool. The other set of cards that I wanted to get all expedition for sure are Cascade Bluffs, Firelit Thicket, and Flooded Grove. Beyond those cards, we have some scattered dual lands. This deck mostly plays green. After that, blue is the most common color, and then red after that. So the rest of my dual lands kind of reflect that. There's 4 Simic dual lands, 3 Gruul, and 2 Izzet. Innistrad are Sulphur Falls, the new borderless Shivan Reef, Expedition Spire Garden, This Secret Lair Rootbound Crag, I wasn't really crazy about this artwork at first, but it's grown on me a lot. New Borderless Karpluzan Forest. New Borderless Yavimaya Coast. Borderless M21 Temple of Mystery. Rejuvenating Springs. This is a card I'd like to upgrade someday and get the borderless version, but it's just kind of expensive. And Innistrad Art Hinterland Harbor. Finally, we have the basic land package. For this deck, I picked all Zendikar full art lands. The reason that I went with Zendikar and the reason that I was so adamant about getting Expedition lands is because Animar feels like a very Zendikar creature to me. I tried for so long to find canonical evidence of exactly what plane Animar is from, and I can't find anything concrete anywhere, but as far as I'm concerned, Animar lives on Zendikar. So we get the Zendikar lands, and that's 6 basic forests, 2 of the basic island. I know probably a lot of you right now are throwing a fit because I didn't do the Cup Islands from the original Zendikar block, but I really like this Whirlpool so much. It's so big and foreboding feeling. And I wanted all my basics to be from the same block, or from the same set. And these were just affordable, I guess, way more affordable than getting original Zendikar full arts. And they're beautiful. I think the artwork is gorgeous. So that's my mana base. Let's get into the spells. For me, when I was building this deck, this is something that I learned from building Yisan. A really important thing with a 3-drop commander to get you a nice competitive edge is having cards that allow you to cast that commander by turn 2. So I have this package of mana dorks that can get me an extra mana on turn 2 so I can be casting Animar. So that's Arbor Elf, this M11 Birds of Paradise promo Elvish Mystic. Someday I might replace this with the Secret Lair Elvish Mystic that came out recently. I like that artwork a lot, but it's kind of expensive. I'm waiting for the price to drop. Secret Lair Elvish Spirit Guide. From the Vault Findhorn Elves. Full Art Llanowar Elves from Dominaria. Sakura Tribe Scout. Simian Spirit Guide. And Wild Canter. Now, obviously, a lot of these cards are conditional. You have to have the right lands to go with everything as well. Your hand has to be just right. But from running test hands, I've found that less than half of the time, but maybe even more than a third of the time, it's not super hard. If you just trust the process, trust the turn 1 draw, the turn 2 draw, usually it works out pretty well. So beyond my 1-drop mana dorks, I obviously have another package of more mana dorks that help out still in the early game. Those are Beast Collar Savant, New Borderless Bloom Tender, Original Art Lotus Cobra, which I prefer to the flashier reprints that came out in the new Zendikar set, Rattleclaw Mystic. You're going to see a lot of morph cards in this list. It's a pretty common strategy with Animar because you can cast the morph card for free if Animar has 3 or more counters on it, and then you just play its morph cost to actually get the creature onto the battlefield. So with Rattleclaw Mystic, it's a net gain of 1 mana. You cast it face down for its morph cost. You pay 2 to flip it right side up, and you get 3 mana. So you net 1 mana, and if you morph it on a turn after it was cast, you can then even tap it for an additional mana. So it's pretty good ramp spell. We have this FNM promo Sakura Tribe Elder and a Somberwald Sage. So getting all of that mana is great, but the way that this Animar deck really works is by playing out your deck and drawing as many cards as possible. So there's a pretty big portion of this deck list that is specifically dedicated to just drawing you more cards. It turns out when you play Magic the Gathering that a pretty good strategy in the game is to draw a lot of cards. So that's one of the things that this deck aims to do. Jeez, there's a lot of them. Augur of Autumn, borderless. Beast Whisperer, New Borderless Consecrated Sphinx. I really love the art on this card. It's just beautiful, and especially in the context of this deck where there's no artifact creatures. The old Consecrated Sphinx was just so Phyrexian looking. I didn't really feel like it fit the vibe of this deck, so I was very excited when this card came out and I was able to pick one up. Elvish Visionary, Borderless Eternal Witness. Doesn't draw you cards, but allows you to recast something that maybe got removed earlier in the game. Borderless Mull Drifter. I really love this artwork as well. I love the colors on it. I think this is a really pretty card. Prime Speaker Zagana. I used to play this card a lot back in Standard. I think it's still a great card. And I just have a soft spot for it. Its mana cost is a little bit obnoxious for this deck, but I don't know if I'll ever cut this card. Shaman of the Great Hunt is a very powerful draw engine in this deck with its ferocious ability. Usually I have several creatures with power 4 or greater out pretty early on in the game, so this can really fill up the hand pretty easily with just a few mana. Soul of the Harvest, Tishana, Voice of Thunder, Vizier of the Menagerie, and Primordial Sage, which is really just a strictly worse Soul of the Harvest, but the artwork is cool. I'm probably not going to cut this card. Of course, sometimes just drawing a card isn't enough. You need to actually search your deck for a specific card, and that's what this package is for. Fauna Shaman is a great card in this deck, a great way to cycle through some sleepers in your hand at certain points in the game, fetch up really any non-land card from this particular deck. Fierce Empath, M25. Borderless Imperial Recruiter. I was really stoked when this card dropped in value. I didn't have this card for a long time. I was finally able to pick a copy up. And Woodland Bellower. One thing that I really like to do with these cards is chain them from one into the other. So you can cast a Woodland Bellower and fetch up a Fierce Empath. When Fierce Empath enters the battlefield, you fetch up another big creature. Or you can cast Fierce Empath to get Woodland Bellower in your hand, cast Woodland Bellower, get an Imperial Recruiter, get something else off of Imperial Recruiter. It's just kind of like, helps you kind of toolbox your deck out a little bit. These three cards, especially in conjunction with one another, are very fun to play around with. One thing about this deck that is maybe a bit annoying is that I have included as many creature counters as I could. So it is a mono creature deck, but I'm still trying to like have a bit of a control element to it as well. This deck list is a little odd compared to some other Animar decks. Now, I don't have a Hullbreaker Horror yet. Someday I want to buy a foil Hullbreaker Horror, either a borderless one or the black and white one. They're just too pricey right now. Hopefully someday they drop and I can actually include that in the deck list. But until then, I do have the following cards. Draining Whelk, which is at most points in an Animar game, basically a counterspell attached to a big flyer. Frilled Mystic, kind of a clunky mana cost, but if you have the lands available and you can leave yourself with 4 mana untapped, it's nice to have an outright counterspell in your hand. Glen Elendra Archmage. This is a fun card to clone as well, or to do counter manipulation on so that you can sack it over and over again and use it to counter multiple spells throughout the course of the game. Mystic Snake, of course. Frilled Mystic, just a little bit easier to cast. Willbender, FNM promo, not an outright counterspell, but definitely a way to protect yourself and protect your board a little bit. And Stratus Dancer, another morph spell, just a good thing to have in the deck. And beyond counterspells, I have some other creatures in here that help to maintain a level of control over the board state. I have this promo Acidic Slime. I really love the Secret Lair Acidic Slime, but I don't think it ever got printed foil, so this is the one I have for now. Collector Oof, Secret Lair. I think the artwork is funny. It's kind of a little bit corny, but it was way more affordable than the original artwork was foil, and I like it well enough. I think it's fun to have different art styles in a deck. Den Protector is another morph card. It doesn't necessarily control the board state. I probably should have included this in the other section with Eternal Witness, but I didn't. Oh well, here it is. Rexage, of course. Gotta run a Rexage. Zealous Conscripts. This is a really nice card for Animar because at most points in the game, it only costs a single red mana and you get to steal something from someone. Of course, a big part of the Animar strategy is +1/+1 counters. So I have some cards in this deck that care about 1/1 counters. Altered Ego is a card that I don't see on many, if any, deck lists for Animar. I'm not really sure why. I think it's a very cool card in this deck. At most points in the game, it'll only cost you a blue and a green. It can't be countered, which is nice. And let's say, for example, your Animar has 4 counters on it. You cast it for a blue and a green, and it automatically comes in that extra 2 mana that goes beyond the 2 colorless, goes into the X. So you can clone any creature, can't be countered, and it'll come in with 2 extra counters on it. And that's only if your Animar is a 5/5, which is a pretty low bar. So Altered Ego feels like a bit of a powerhouse in this deck. I don't know. I'm going to shut up about Altered Ego. I just think that this card is really sick. Forgotten Ancient is obviously a great card in any 4-player format if you're running green, Especially nice in Animar because you can just dump its counters onto the boy at the beginning of your turn, which is pretty sweet. This deck used to be very Hydra heavy. I was running Apocalypse Hydra and Savageborn Hydra and Mist Cutter and the snake one that's I can't remember the name of right now. Over the years, I've cut a lot of those cards for more utilitarian stuff, but this one sticks around because it is basically Genesis Wave on a stick. The nice thing about Hydras in an Animar deck is that you just pay 2 green, and then however many counters Animar has becomes the X value. So if Animar is a 7/7, I spend 2 green mana and cast Genesis Hydra, and I basically get a 6/6 and I Genesis Wave for 6. Obviously, you can pay more on top of that if you want to, but Hydra's just, with Animar, the value is too high. 2 Hydra. We've also got Herald of Secret Streams, makes commander damage a much more lethal possibility. Hydroid Krasis, of course, this card is a bomb. Colonian Hydra, also pretty nuts in an Animar deck. And Primordial Hydra. This is the non-utility Hydra that I kept just because it can get so out of hand so quickly. This next package of cards I'm kind of calling the Cares About Creatures package. These are all of the cards that are specifically good because my Animar deck list is mono creature. Bramble Sovereign, borderless, lets you clone any creature you cast. Nikia of the Old Ways, which essentially doubles however much mana all of my lands produce at the cost of I can only cast creature spells, which is great. I only have creature spells. Perforos, God of the Forge. People hate Rurik Thar the Unbowed. Personally, I don't see what the problem is. And Surak Dragonclaw makes all of my spells uncounterable, gives all of my creatures trample. What's not to love? This next card package I'm calling the Cares About Blinking package. There's not a ton of cards that fall under this umbrella, but they're some of the cards that will most often win me the games. So we have Deadeye Navigator, must have in any Animar deck. Maelstrom Wanderer, which I got signed by Thomas Boxa at Command Fest Vegas a few years ago. I love the old artwork. I love the Boxa artwork so much more than the remake. The remake's beautiful too, but this is like one of my favorite card arts of all time. And it's foil and it's signed. Sick. Mana War, cheap way to bounce good ETB stuff back to your hand. Peregrine Drake, obviously infinite mana combo with Deadeye Navigator, but just a very good card in this deck in general, even without that pairing. And Temur Sabertooth, Secret Lair foil. It's really interesting foiling on this card. It looks kind of unlike most other foil jobs. Probably there's a lot of people who don't like it, but personally I like it a lot. Next up, just some miscellaneous, generally decent cards. Nylea, God of the Hunt, gives everything trample, which is nice for commander damage strategy. Progenitor Mimic, just a nice way to flood your board. You can copy something with ETB. Thassa, God of the Sea, usually just a 1 mana scrying engine. Also pays to make stuff unblockable, which doesn't hurt. And Vesuvan Shapeshifter, just a fun, reusable clone. The last 2 cards in the list are the endgame beatdown monsters. We have Budget Craterhoof Behemoth, Endrace Forerunners, and then of course, what green commander deck would be complete without the Craterhoof him very self? Beautiful. So that's the deck, y'all. Mono creature, mono foil, Animar. I'm about to get to re-sleeving this. This deck, it has been a very, very long-term project for me, and I am just so pleased with how it's turned out. I'm so happy that I can finally call it done after, over a decade of building it. I am going to be leaving a link in the description below the video to my deck list for this deck. I'll also leave a link for the sleeves that I bought and the deck box that I bought that I showed at the top of the video. If you have any suggestions for cards that you think belong in this deck, go ahead and let me know. Maybe there's something I haven't thought of yet. If you think that there are any cards that I should be cutting, you just don't understand why I'm running them, you can let me know that as well, and I'll let you know why they're in there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, and good game.